Okay, welcome everyone. I am calling to order the Beacon Hill Architectural Commission public hearing at 5:02 p.m. on Thursday, August 21st, 2025. This is the August 2025 hearing of the Beacon Hill Architectural Commission. I am Mark Kiefer, the chairman, and I am joined this evening by Vice Chair of the Commission, Arian Allen, as well as, let's see, who else is here? At the moment, Commissioner Steele, and we are also expecting Commissioners Feingold and Jackson, and we will let the record reflect when they join. Today, the Commission will be holding a public hearing to review applications in accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the subsequent amendments thereto. We're conducting this meeting online, which is over Zoom. To ensure public access to deliberations of the Beacon Hill Architectural Commission, the public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing, again, otherwise known as Zoom. As you may have heard, or if you've just joined, the hearing is being recorded, so all further conversations between commissioners should be audible to the public in attendance until the hearing is adjourned. At this point, we like to acknowledge any elected officials or members of the media who may be present. Let's just see. Not sure if I see any.
Mark maybe just mentioned to raise their hand.
Yes, if you could just raise your hand on your Zoom panel, just so we could acknowledge you, members of the media or elected officials.
Not seeing any. I'll let you know if I see Dan.
Okay, and I see now that I believe Commissioner Feingold has joined. Yes, hi Mo, welcome. Let's see. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, what you'll need to do is raise your hand, but using the button probably at the bottom of your Zoom panel. Nick will supply some handy instructions if you're not familiar with how to do that. We'll also give you the heads up as we adjudicate each application in turn or violation. We will have a designated time for public comment, and we'll give you a heads up when we're going to do that. At that time, if you want to be heard on the record, you will need to raise your hand, quote unquote, using the button probably on the bottom of your Zoom panel, and then Nick will call on you and acknowledge you. Again, we'll give you a heads up when the time comes. I think that's it. So why don't we get started? We do have a few violations to hear at the beginning here before we get into design review. Sorry, no, we have a business item first. Sorry, thanks, Nick, for reminding me, which is the ratification of, we've actually got two prior hearings, the June 2025 and July 2025 public hearings. So let me ask my colleagues, commissioners, do you have any comments, edits, revisions for either the June 2025 or July 2025 hearings? I was not here for June, so I'm going to abstain on that one, but does anyone have any revisions to that? Okay, hearing none, I will, let's just do these one at a time since I need to abstain from the June one. I'll move approval of the June 26, 2025 hearing minutes of the Beacon Hill Architectural Commission.
I so move.
Okay, is that a second, Sandy?
Second.
Okay, we will vote. Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Feingold? I think you need to unmute Mo.
Oh,
there's
you go, Mo.
Commissioner
okay.
Feingold?
Aye, I'm voting aye, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Kiefer abstains. Commissioner Steele?
Aye.
Okay, I'll now move approval of the July 17th, 2025 public hearing minutes of the Beacon Hill Architectural Commission. Do I hear a second?
Second,
Okay, we will vote. Sorry, and again, just one more time, no revisions? Okay,
No.
we'll vote. Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Feingold?
aye,
Commissioner Jackson is not here yet. Commissioner Kiefer votes aye. Commissioner Steele?
Aye.
Okay, those meeting minutes are approved as well. So now we'll move on to violation review. First item is, I believe, 77 Charles. Is there a representative? It is 77 Charles, right?
Yes.
Representative from 77 Charles present.
I see Philippa, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute her.
Hi, I'm just waiting for Patrick to join, but I can't, I don't see him here and I am trying to get a hold of him. He would be the one to represent this. Is there any way to come back to this next or?
Looks like Philippa, looks like Bridget is in the waiting room. Would she be someone to speak to?
Yeah, I mean, I would get her to join and then,
Okay, let's see. There she is right there. Let's see.
Nick,
Hey, Bridget.
and I think Philip is here. I we're waiting for Patrick, but I don't think he's here.
Yeah,
I can't tell.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. Philippa is here, but she was waiting for Patrick to come on board.
Okay. I don't. Do you not see him yet?
I don't see him.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we can probably get started with Philippa and me.
Okay.
Okay, hi Bridget, please go ahead. We've got the plans up on the screen here, so you can probably see. So Bridget, can you just give us the briefest of recaps as to, just for our commission's benefit and the public, as to why we're here and where we are
or
in this
I can go ahead.
process? Oh, sure, go ahead.
Oh. Okay. So this is the work that was done on the store on the facade previously, and our application seeks to
Steve?
change this back to something closer to what was there. And I think one of the objections of the commission was that the detailing was not correct, and the elements of the storefront were larger than they should be. So if you can show our proposed drawing.
Yeah, Bridget.
And Bridget, while we're
Yes.
doing that, I think Patrick's here, by the way. Just again, to quickly recap for the benefit of the
Okay,
commission,
all
to
right.
remind everyone.
You
No,
take
I
over.
was just gonna say that there were other aspects that were previously approved, an extension of the signage, some lighting of the signage. And I think we are getting closer to a revised concept for the storefront. So please go ahead.
That's great. Patrick, do you want to take
Yes.
over?
Yeah, and I'm going to be very I'm actually in Providence, outside of the Providence train station, kind of a wind-swept place. But my colleague Philippa I think is going to be the one that is going to make sure that we have the appropriate documentation. But I think with what you have available there, Nick, I presume that you're there.
Mhm.
You should have a design of what our proposal is, as well as some historical sources that we used in design of the of our re-renovation. Okay, that's beautiful. Okay, so that's probably the most relevant historical one right there. You can tell it's from the late 1950s, but it is remarkably good in that it has the entire transom, or virtually the entire one, except for what's blocked by the sign, visible. And it's a very elegant one, I think, that has 3 lights vertically, with so a square and then a double square and then a square vertically. It has various other things that accumulate. Okay, then so let's say if we go to the another historical precedent, we will see something rather related, which is which is from a subsequent year where there is more that is blocked. And if you could show that, that would be great.
This picture here, Patrick.
Well, this picture is great in that it shows the facade on the right is well, it actually it you can see that there is a transom. However, one can only see the top lights, but it's fairly evident that it's 3 lights high. It differs from our plan in a way, as far as we can tell. It looks as though it's essentially a continuous frieze of lights. And then if we look at the lower glass, what we see is corner windows. Yeah, thank you. That have a mullion at the corner that's relatively slender, and that is we strove, I guess I should say, to achieve that. And what you'll find in the existing situation is that the corner post is quite substantially larger. And that was something that in the original violation hearing, at which I was not present, I was not part of the project at all at that time. I was brought in by the owner, Julianne Kiley. Essentially, well, I think she was looking for a really nice design. She recognized that the project had gone through a very unfortunate process where it snowballed from being a very, very minimal repair into being a very large one. And unfortunately, the city, the inspectional services, neither in the office nor in their field inspections, called attention to the fact that the project had expanded enormously, and that in part of that was that they really bypassed the architectural commission, which was disturbing to many people. And so anyway, I came in afterward and have made an effort in several ways to try to organize the process so we only were dealing with a few issues at the same time, because there were so many problems with the state of the design at that time. So we've picked things out very carefully.
Being recorded.
I'm sorry.
Keep going, Patrick.
So what we tried to do is stage it so that we're not dealing with too many things at the same time. So maybe the most important part of it now is the glazing, which consists of 2 parts: the frieze of the transom windows at the top, and then the corner windows below, trying to really reduce the size of the corner post. I believe that we have, and the transom window was not very difficult. Almost right away, working with JB Sash, they could do it very, very well in a way that we thought was truly sympathetic with the kind of process that would have happened many decades ago. But in fact, it's even better because it's true divided lights, double glazed, which the original was, I'm sure, single glazed. So that was something that we did work out with JB Sash, and I think others probably would have been able to do it, although they've been especially constructive. But then on the lower part, that was much more difficult. That corner post was the builder and his engineer had an idea that that post needed to be much, much larger than what our conclusion had been after studying it. Our feeling was that, in fact, there was no load to speak of on that corner. It was really a matter of glass meeting glass at the corner. Nonetheless, it is double glazed for many good reasons. And so there's a little bit more complexity in such a joint in double glazing. However, we have pretty much been able to achieve a similar appearance to what was there way back in time, which was approximately it was a fair amount under 2 inches in width in each face of that corner post. There is also the dimension of the sash, but the post we were able to reduce by pretty close to a third, thus relieving the design of something that many people in that original hearing thought was disturbing and aesthetically unacceptable, also in contradiction to the historical nature of that facade. So I think that we've gotten back to something that, even though it's in many respects, there's an aspect of artifice to it, because the double glazing is a very, very different proposition, but we've pretty much been able to get it down to a very slender corner. So there are some other differences from the very old, and that is, rather than having a single transom that went all the way across, we have divided that into 3 parts with separations between them, and it simply was a bit pragmatic to have pieces that could be easily done, but also proportionally relate to the rest of the building as it was and as it is. So it's a relatively minor change, but one that, in our judgment, felt true to the overall composition. There are other parts of the elevation as well, but I'd like to stop for a moment to see how people respond to our approach to the glazing, and then we can deal with some other aspects of the design.
I have a question of the transom. You show it 4 lights high. I thought the image you shown before was 3 lights high. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, you're not. I actually think that what we would like to do is to have the transom be the 4 has a lot to recommend it, which is that they're basically all square lights. It looks very nice. I'm happy with that. I believe that earlier it was 3 lights, but I don't. The amount of documentation that we have is fairly slender, and the 4 lights high seems rather good. We've looked at many oddly enough, Irish pubs in Boston, but also in Dublin, and the transom is quite a feature. It's historically interesting because, even though Jack Kiley and Julianne both very much identify as Irish, it's actually the building itself has been many different things over the years, and not as far as we know, an Irish pub. That's very dear to them if we can achieve something related to not only a pub in Dublin, but also some of the really nice, beautiful bars, Irish pubs in Boston, such as on Upper Beacon Street, and in a number of other locations where the transom is sometimes a feature, but also a rather delicate polychrome approach. The building, as in general, was black, completely black, and what we hoped is that we might have delicate highlights of gold trim on it, and that was a departure from the what the facade was composed of a year and a half ago, when unfortunately the facade was destroyed, at which point it was virtually all black with some irregularities. But in prior history, the facade had a variety of different forms and different styles of painting and signage and the like. So we took some liberties, but not against the history, but possibly a new stage.
Okay, so Patrick, thank you for this, for taking us through this. Just to sum up very quickly for the commission. So what's before us today is principally two things, right? Three, let's call it three things. Thanks, Nick. We're now looking at the elevation here. First is the replacement of just the boards on the transom with transom lights. The second is the reconfiguration of these corner where the front windows go at an angle and turn inward toward the door, these corner posts
Correct.
to make them thinner. And then
Yep.
thirdly is the actually, I guess there's another but at a high level, the other aspect is the introduction of this what's shown in yellow on the diagram here, this trim detail in the coloring, right?
Correct.
Have I left anything out?
Well, since this had been raised quite rightly by Nick, evidently in the process of making this presentation, somehow the electrical panel, which would be as we're looking at the building here on the left or north side, in the lower panel, right in the very area of Nick's arrow,
Yes.
there is a white metal panel that was historically part of the electrical system, an access panel, evidently for the electrical company. For various reasons, it is no longer necessary, but it's rather a nice artifact, and we would like to reinstall that in a slightly different position than it had been, centering it rather than having it to the side. It just seemed a stronger place in the composition. And otherwise, I think that in the past, we've dealt with the lighting and the signage, and they have both been approved, although they are integral to the overall composition, but
Sure.
but they're not emphasized in this one.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I've been dying to ask this question. And
Please,
I
go ahead.
appreciate your presentation, but this is a violation, correct? Right now we're doing a violation review. So
Yes.
let's go, because as a presentation, this is great, but I want to concentrate. Let's get down to the nitty gritty of it. What is the actual violation? Is it something that you decided to do on your own that
No.
that you did
No.
not bring?
We
So
no,
let's-
as I said earlier, we were not involved with the project at all until well after the violation hearing. So
Arian,
so-
they're
so,
the
and-
fixers.
yeah, that's right. We're the well, there are various operative cliches for what our role was, but I think I truly believe in the sincerity of Julian Kiley's approach, that this really was a quagmire into which she was drawn without any intention on her part. And
But-
when it was called to her attention, she took it very, very seriously, and she sought out me because of my experience, our company's experience with the historic architecture of Beacon Hill. And so our role has been to try to create, not just repair, but to create an appealing and a facade that draws strongly from the history of this building and others on Beacon Hill.
But to the commissioner's question, what was the Nick, what was the actual violation?
Yeah, so let me just get to the screen. So the violation is everything that Patrick is talking about right now. So it is
They rebuilt the storefront without permission, basically. It was a
Okay.
repair.
No,
That
I know
became-
that. What about the transom?
that's part of it, correct? Yeah, so the entire storefront is up for discussion because everything was replaced. So now we are
okay.
visiting the entire storefront and legalizing it
Oh.
essentially. And Patrick is presenting his plans to do so.
Okay, thank you.
But just to respond to the transom really is, it's relates to the older history of this structure, but it Nick, could you possibly put on the actual current existing facade?
Sure.
Okay.
Let me
There
just
you
bring it up. Nope, almost there.
Oh, yeah, that's right. This was what Nick is showing there is the prior form of the facade, and now this is the one that was constructed a year and a half ago, and was without the permission of the commission. And
Right,
they're
okay.
and actually, well, I'm not surprising. The commission was very articulate about some of the things that seemed very distasteful about it. And Julian Kiley is very sympathetic with these criticisms. One of which is that the posts at the corners of the corner windows are excessively large. Unfortunately, the engineer and the builder on their own felt that these were necessary, but our analysis says they're not.
Right.
And so that's so anyway, so that was among the criticisms. I think overall people felt
Okay.
that things were very beefy.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do you have a
yes.
detail of the actual corner as
Yes.
you propose to reduce it?
Yes.
That's the critical detail for me, to look at how you diminish, what the diminished corner looks like.
Yes. I have to admit that has not been confirmed. I believe that that is very, very close. That we expect that we will have. Yeah, there you go. So what you see there is drawn as 1.25 inches. It's possible that it will be slightly larger than that, but we're working. We've been at the time that we did this, we were working with very good sash companies around Boston, who had even done some of the sash on Charles Street. But those windows were in fact all single glazed, and with a type of mullion that is no longer a white metal mullion is no longer used, and the narrowest that they could produce was about 4 inches in aluminum.
Right,
And,
okay.
and so what we're going for, even though actually what we're showing there, we felt it would be possible to have a custom made metal sash. But in talking with JB Sash and Marvin, we believe that we can make a wooden corner that is very, very close to this in dimension.
So it's 1.25 inches on each face, because it's.
That's right. That's correct.
So you'll be, but that's considerably less than what is currently mocked up on the site.
The existing is around 4 inches.
Yeah.
I believe it's
right.
slightly larger.
Yeah, it looks like a 1x4.
Yeah, right. And inside it has I believe two 2x4s, but by the time it's cased, it's significantly larger than that. So this.
What do
Yes,
you
go ahead.
imagine the original post was at the corner? Was
Well,
it round?
I actually just by looking at the way that these sash were made, and one can even see just down the street, there are several mullions that appear that are made of white metal inside and out, and the glazing either butts or sometimes is held by by those mullion pieces. There is one. It's actually really hard to see, but it's about 3 buildings down. I believe it's at upstairs, downstairs, and it's somewhat canted. So it's the closest to this, and it is very well. It's not really possible to tell what's inside of it, but it would appear as though, again, it's a couple of pieces of white metal that have been sandwiched, holding the glass. But it's single pane glass, so it's a little bit different than what we're doing.
What is the thickness of the double pane glass you're proposing?
Well, what we're imagining is that the double pane will be 1/4 inch of glass, 1/4 inch of vacuum space, and 1/4 inch of glass.
So
So-
3/4 of an inch.
Correct.
So you're ending up with still a pretty fat mullion, but at the corner, but diminished.
But actually comparatively comparable. That's redundant. Anyway, somewhat comparable to what the appearance of the ones down the street. It's the overall, it's definitely beefy. It is a corner. It doesn't have any load bearing
I
requirements.
understand that. I understand. I'm just talking about why it's still as fat as it is, and if the double pane glazing is creating that condition.
I think that's a fair statement. I think that the double pane does add to the overall massiveness of it. However, from the point of view of what one can see of the corner mullion, this may be comparable. It is possible to if one looks very, very closely at the photograph of the existing position of situation of a year and a half ago, what you will see is there seems to be even some flashing that's going over some thin metal. That's going over some sort of mullion detail. Unfortunately, we have been unable to find anything exactly like that. In terms of the visible slenderness, this should be actually very analogous, both inside and out.
I mean, the optimum, I'll just, one more comment. The optimum solution to this problem would be that the corner posts be in metal.
Well,
And then-
I would have liked that. And we did talk with many glazers. I couldn't get anybody to build it. What I could get was Marvin and JB Satch, who worked very closely together, basically felt that they could do it in wood. Now, if it comes to it, if we can do it, what I would like is to have a wood post with a very thin, 16th of an inch, maybe even less, of flashing that wraps it to recreate the metal appearance previously, but also I think it would actually help protect the that situation is in a situation of very high traffic.
Yeah.
People handle it, and it would be best if it had some degree of metal protection, even if it's not metal. The design that you see, I thought I could have that fabricated out of solid metal. It didn't seem to me like a huge project. I have not been able to find anybody who will do that for me.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Mo, to sum up, Mo, I think the bottom line is what was there before, the actual wood was thinner than what they're proposing, but there was a pretty wide piece of metal flashing on either side. So the total
Yes.
expression of the thing was probably bigger than what they're proposing.
Yeah.
So 6 of one, half dozen the other. I think,
Right.
of course, we entertain bigger muntins to accommodate insulated glass in
Right,
window
right.
sash generally. Maybe this is kind of in that same category. Commissioners, any other questions before we take public comment on this? I just want to move it along so we can have a discussion
you.
about the particulars. Thank you, Commissioner Feingold. Any other
All right.
questions? Okay, thank you, Patrick. We'll come back, we'll circle back and debate this, of course, but we appreciate all the information and very much your efforts to be responsive to our concerns and make this thinner and try to restore at least the spirit, if not the exact design of the transom lights. Again, we'll talk the specifics in a moment, but for the moment, why don't we take public comment? Again, if you want to be heard on the record, please raise your hand using the button on your Zoom panel, and Nick will call on you in turn and unmute you.
Okay, first we have Rochelle with the Civic Association. Rochelle, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Beacon Hill Civic Association. We oppose ratification of the current and proposed alterations to the unapproved rebuilding of the storefront as it still remains changed into a completely different style, specifically a British pub vernacular. The modifications and proposed modifications are not an appropriate architectural change to this building and do not satisfy Guideline A4, do not duplicate the original trim as specified by Guideline F2, and do not match the original features and composition, design, color, texture, and other visible qualities as specified by Guideline A2, especially the tripartite zones with golden borders, that do not evoke the prior uninterrupted ban of fenestration condition to meet guideline A3. We do not appreciate the return to thin corner mullions. We do appreciate the return to thin corner mullions at the storefront. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rochelle. Mark, I'm not seeing any other public comments, so we can turn it back to you.
Okay, we'll close public comment. Thank you very much, Rochelle. Okay, so again, we're talking about transom lights, the rework of the design for the main windows, this corner specifically, the gold, the addition of the gold trim. Let's take this corner element first, since we were just talking about that and it's all fresh in our mind. Patrick, I appreciate the efforts you've made to try to address this concern. To my eye, it looks a lot better. I appreciate that we're talking about insulated glass, which of course is now very much a common feature that we see. And of course, we've approved in all kinds of other contexts for fenestration generally. And moreover, we appreciate that unfortunately, but realistically, there is at times a necessity to make the mullions and or muttons larger to accommodate the insulated glass in a manner that ensures that the structural integrity of the window will be retained. Doesn't serve the interest of historic preservation if the thing falls apart in a few years and we have to make a new one. I guess to my view, I think I'm satisfied with the result that we have here, particularly given, there's the original wood element in the window, but then there's the effective width of it, which was made considerably larger by the flashing on the inside. And I think what we've wound up with, I don't know for certain, but just looking at the images Nick had up there and the drawing we're looking at right now, I think the net effect of the proposed rework of this is one that gives us an effective width that's pretty close to what you saw before when you just looked at it, given the wide flashing on either side. This, I think, frankly, would be a neater appearance if nothing else, because that silver flashing kind of stuck out from the otherwise black wood element and so forth. But with that, let me ask my colleagues here. Commissioner Feingold, you were just talking about this. Does anyone have a different view of this, or what do you think of Patrick's revised design for this corner? Any dissenting views? Okay.
This is Feingold again.
Yeah, please.
I think, I mean, I had exhaustive questioning before. I think he's done the best he can, and I think it's fine.
Yeah, that's kind of where I come out as well, under the circumstances. Let me just say, I should have said at the outset, this is a violation, and appreciate the comments of the Civic Association wanting to be pretty precise about how we treat this. But I will say, for my part, I don't believe, in all candor, that there's anything particularly important or historic about the fine details of this storefront. I think the fact that it is a storefront, of course, matters tremendously. And I don't believe we would be contemplating something that would rework the building to remove the storefront, or otherwise perhaps even restore it to original, kind of residential configuration or something like that. I think the question here is, how important are these details? We've just worried one of them pretty significantly, which we thought was very important, which is the delicacy, for lack of a better word, of some of these elements, which Patrick has taken, it looks like, some significant pains to try to get us at least closer to the delicacy that we had. I think that's absolutely a step in the right direction. I think because we're not dealing with, at least in my opinion, a particularly historically significant storefront, again, in its fine detail, I don't believe, as a matter of principle, that we ought to sort of cement in amber, if I'm not mixing my metaphors too badly, a not particularly successful design. And so I think there is room in this case, in my opinion, to try to improve it. And I think the transom light, as we discussed, in the prior hearing is an attempt to restore historical detail, at least, or at least make an homage to what might have been, a more fully expressed historical detail, but for which we know certainly there is evidence there was some fenestration in the transom, that I think there's room to improve this. And specifically, I'm fine with the idea of bringing back a transom light. I think we've already agreed on that. It's just a question of how to do it. Patrick, Nick and I were talking, and I appreciate your comments earlier about, how many lights should there be? In talking about this, Nick and I were talking, I think, I won't speak for Nick, but I'll let him speak for himself. I think we were kind of persuaded that a treatment more analogous to what's next door, where it's one small light, a double light, and then another small light, might be less busy and more appropriate. I think this is let's just call it informed conjecture, but maybe we can get the photograph back up again, Nick. The building next door, these storefronts, we can probably conjecture that they were added at, turn of the 19th to 20th century. And that treatment of the square light and then a double light and then a square light is at least vaguely evocative of the kind of arts and crafts style fenestration that you do see in a few places elsewhere. Thanks, Nick. We're looking at the one on the left now. 95 Mount Vernon Street, for example, which is that very large apartment on the upper side of West Cedar in the corner of Mount Vernon, has a similar treatment in the fenestration. That building is from that period. We know this because they redid the windows some years ago, and we required them to replicate the sort of arts and crafts style that was designed at that time, part of the design at the time. So Patrick, you had, I think, said, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you were kind of, you rather liked this design we see on the left,
Yes.
with the double in the middle. How do you feel about using something like that instead?
I feel very, very comfortable with that. I think I really enjoy your allusion to the arts and crafts, because to some extent what we're dealing with is a very kind of late echo of the arts and crafts, Art Nouveau, and even the beginning of Deco, and I think that arrangement of the lights does relate to that more than it does to rather more simple proportioning of the lights. So I would think that would be an asset. I've been, as you commented, I've been very drawn to the one on the left. We made an effort to recreate the historical on this building, but it's very difficult to know for sure. It does look a little bit, if you look on the right side, as if it's actually a system of 3, but when we actually drew it up, we ended up with 4, and it would have been it's very easy to double up in the middle and to have it echo that design of the past, and I think it would be, in my judgment, very handsome, not overly elegant, but with a lovely grace, a subtle grace.
Yeah, I think it's got sort of more to recommend it just architecturally. It's a little more of a stylistic statement. I will say, for what it's worth, I'm not suggesting for a moment that we have direct evidence that suggests that this particular transom light would have looked like this. But, in cases like this where we don't have hard evidence either way, because whatever there was lost, and we know what's there now is not original. Of course, historically, what we have done pretty consistently is look for analogous cases that are at least a clue to the stylistic intent that was evident at the time. And for example, when there are iron railings that have been removed and we don't know what they would have looked like originally, but we have a house next door that was built in the same period, we've sometimes specified that the adjacent railing be replicated for want of any direct evidence of what the original railing would have looked like. I think this is kind of analogous to that case. We're not asserting that these buildings were twins built at the same time, but it's at least a clue as to what this might have looked like, that is less of a conjecture than just designing something from scratch and saying, well, here's one idea, as it were.
As
Go ahead,
me.
Commissioner Feingold.
As my first comment was about why 4 lights instead of 3, and I think that because it's just too much gridding.
Yeah, busy.
So this suggestion of going 1, 2, 1 is very interesting, and it's just a commercial thing, and it would lighten the top a bit. Having the transom all glass is great, but I like that idea. I have 2 other small comments when you get around to it, Commissioner.
Please go ahead. You've got the floor. Go ahead.
Oh, well, there was one comment made about there's an electrical panel you wanted to, which is no longer necessary. If those things come and go, we know, like TV aerials of the antennas of the past, I wouldn't have it there as a fake. I just wouldn't have it. And I certainly would not put it in the middle, because then, I would have it offside like it was, but I just wouldn't have it. Because it's nothing is significant about it. The second is, I keep hearing the word gold, like gold paint about something. It's a very contemporary saw point. There's too much gold being used, so we say nationally. So where is the gold paint you're proposing, and why?
Well, it's on very, very light molding, basically, essentially 3/4 inch. And what we would do ideally is to have the sign painter, who did a very, very beautiful job, and that can be seen at the existing pub, and he's going to add more in the form of the sign that's going to be reinstalled and added to with the allusion to the daughters of Jack Collie. And so it's meant to be a very, very light trim. It's not meant to have the kind of bombastic weight of what I think you're alluding to in some of our public buildings. This is really like a pinstripe, more of
Why do you
gold.
need it at all?
Well, it relates to the history of the Irish pub. It's beautiful, and I think we would execute it very, very nicely.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. I'm finished, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner Feingold.
Mark, we should probably start wrapping up this conversation. We've been going on 50 minutes, just so you know. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Nick. Right, let's move this along. So any other thoughts on the substituting sort of 1-2-1 configuration, which is to say one large light then in the middle and the 2 smaller lights on the top and bottom of the transom light? Any objections to that? Okay, I'm not hearing any. And let's see, there was so the corner things I think we're okay with. It sounds like I think we're okay with the revised design for the transom light. That leaves the gold painting. Any other commissioners have thoughts about that, either for or against the addition of this gold trim? And again, to be clear, it's on an applied molding in some services, and then painting out the recess in the others.
There's no track number yet until 6 o'clock.
Thank you.
Okay, so I would say that since we're a bit at a loss, like in all honesty, we're a bit at a loss at this particular site. A lot of the things that we should have known about have been removed. He's trying his best to make it as close as possible to what might have been there. The idea of the classic pub, I mean, this is Boston. I think that to have something that looks like close to an Irish pub in an old part of Boston makes sense. I'm not against it.
Okay, thank you. And Patrick, let me just ask, because, and I appreciate this is just a perhaps an artifact of the rendering, but it looks quite yellow
Yeah.
in the drawings. And we'd obviously want to see a sample of this
Sure.
to begin with before you ever paint out the whole thing. Maybe you could just, assuming we're as a group okay with this, I think maybe we'd want you to just paint out one of the moldings or something so we could see it.
We would definitely be very, very open to doing a mock-up of the individual pieces. We have submitted the actual color because oddly enough, even gold, you know, in the hierarchy of modern paints, there is a number attached to it. But more relevant to me is that the people who made the sign did such a beautiful job, and our idea is to have them simply do the work because they know how to do it.
Yeah, and it's this metallic paint, so it obviously it's not gold, but it looks like gold. Can you just tell us very quickly if we can go back to the image that shows the outline of the how wide are we talking about for the
Well, I believe that we've given you a drawing from Anderson McQuaid of their molding, which is a stock molding. There are some instances where we might have to shave it down. We might butt it together, so it wouldn't be absolutely stock. That would be, we would need the latitude to play that a little bit by ear, but we would try to do it in the most harmonious way possible. Now, I mean, I haven't spoken with the sign painter about this. I would not be averse myself to having him take a strip of the molding and just gild it and then deliver it, and we can hold it up onto the wall, or maybe a few pieces, so that we can sense the composition. I think what we'll find is that it's very delicate. I know we had no ability to draw that. Architectural drawings are much more clunky in the era of object-based three-dimensional presentation. It used to be we drew with lines. Now it's very hard to achieve that kind of finesse, but this is the way we make things.
Right. Okay. So, with respect to this, Nick, can you remind us? That I don't know that there's certainly not another example of exactly this kind of treatment. Of course, on Charles Street, I mean, there aren't any really other pubs of this nature, but so appreciate this is a particular architectural stylistic treatment that is common on English or Irish pubs. But I guess the question then comes down to its historical appropriateness. There are a couple of other examples on Charles Street of facades that are two different colors, at least, with window trim being one color, for example, and a frieze above the storefront another, and so forth. But they're relatively rare. Nick, did you want to just remind the commissioners your sort of recommendation on this particular feature, this aspect?
We're talking about the gold trim.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. I think we should see a mock-up of the color. But I think overall it provides a nice contrast to the monotone color that was there before, which was all black. And I think from a staff perspective, I'm okay with it.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, right. That's another, I think, important consideration, just very quickly. This facade is otherwise utterly monochrome and it's all black. So this is an attempt to add, if not restore, some additional detail in the form of the color. Okay, so with that, and I guess that the remaining item is the electrical cover. I mean, it was there. It's been put back in the middle. It was in the other spot. As strictly speaking, it was an element that historically had been there for a long time. There are a lot of these things, a lot of these kinds of things are no longer in use, but they are nevertheless still there. They do reflect a history of the building. So I think I guess I wouldn't necessarily use Commissioner Feingold's word of calling it a fake. It certainly is not doing anything now, but it was an element that was it did serve a function for probably a long period of this building's life. And so I think it's embossed metal. It's kind of an interesting feature, and it does speak to the evolving history of the building. So I would prefer that we keep that. Since it's not doing anything, I guess it can be put back in its original location, Commissioner Feingold, if you feel strongly about that. But it is where it is now. It is back on there and it's centered. Anyone else have a strong view on that, or a view at all? It's not shown in this diagram, but it is there on the building right now. Okay, so to move this to a conclusion then, unless I hear any other further views on this, I would move that the application, number one, that let me back up, Nick. If we approve what's before us today, does that take care of the violation entirely, or is there anything else?
Yeah, you just motion to approve how you want to approve it, and then also motion to ratify the violation in the
Right.
same motion. Yeah.
Okay, so I would move as follows, that the violation be dismissed and the application be approved with the following provisos. Number one, that the exact specifications of the window element, the corner window element, to the extent that they may differ in the final construction, be supplied to staff for approval in advance. Number two, that the transom light be revised to reflect the agreed upon revised configuration of the double height light in the middle and the single height light on the top and bottom, such as that it is a 3 light vertical configuration, with the middle light being twice the height of the upper and lower lights, and that the painting of the molding, the gold painting, a sample be applied and approved by staff in advance of the completion of the work.
I second that motion.
Okay, we will vote. Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Feingold. Mo, I think
I
you're
want to
muted.
make a friendly amendment which is, I totally object to this panel. Other than that, I think it's fine.
Oh, okay, sorry. I asked for further comments on that, and I didn't hear you. If you made one, forgive me. We're in the middle of voting on the motion, so as
Right.
procedurally,
I
we need,
object to.
well, you know what,
So no, right, Mo?
I'm voting no because of that silly panel.
okay, so Commissioner Feingold votes no. Commissioner Kiefer votes yes. Commissioner Steele. Did we lose Commissioner Steele?
Nope.
I
Sit-
said yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't quite hear you. Thank you very much. Okay. So I believe the motion carries. Yes, Nick?
Motion carries, yes.
Yes. Okay. So it is approved. Patrick, thanks very much for all your
Well-
work on this, and Bridget
Well-
and Philippa.
Well,
Uh,
thank you so much. Thank you all. I mean, very, very insightful discussion.
You'll get a letter from Nick as usual. If you have any questions, please follow up with him directly, and he'll be in contact, or be in contact with him about a sample, and he'll come out and see it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be there.
Okay. Moving right along, 97 Mount Vernon. Is there a representative from 97 Mount Vernon present? That would be, I believe, S. Vigneault.
Yep, I just hit unmute. There you go, Stephen. You should be all set.
Okay. Here I am.
Welcome, Stephen. Thanks for coming in. You
Thank
want to
you.
just give us a quick summary? We're talking about an intercom. Is that correct?
Okay, you're ahead of me. That is the existing ugly intercom that's been here for a couple of years. That is the violation. And all right, I called Boston Forging and Welding, gave them the dimensions that I need, and they just made up the box. I had gone to see, can you let's see, I wanted to get to this picture. The picture at 108 Mount Vernon, that's the inside of it. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
That one is the one that Mr. Armada sent me to see what he would approve. And that's it. And that is what our box will look like once it's polished and buffed, and I hope lacquered and then engraved. It has to be hand engraved. And they're doing it. I mean, we bought the thing, it's being worked on. And
Okay, so the box will cover the existing thing that's there now.
Yeah.
Will it basically, can we go back to the image of the existing intercom panel? And can you just tell us, are you seeing this too, Stephen?
Yep.
And it will fit within this white molding that goes around?
What my ideal thing is that there's the black thing that looks just like a black
Yep.
panel
Got it.
behind this is a cowl. It's not a panel. It's not a flat thing. It's a cowl. It's kind of like a thing you'd see on the old payphones. And it's ugly. And that molding is ugly. I want to have all that removed and then have that brass box popped on there and this disconnected, put back into the brass box and attached and ready to go.
Okay, so my question is just, will the brass box be any taller than the inside dimension of the white molding we're looking at?
No.
Okay, great. So it'll fit inside there. That's all I wanted to establish. Okay. And very good. You said that you're proposing some engraving on the outside of it?
Yeah, the address, 97 Mount Vernon.
Okay,
And
very
then
good.
in fact, just exactly what the finished product there is, and it says intercom panel open to, whatever. So yeah, exactly that.
Right, okay.
Only it'll be 97 Mount Vernon.
Okay, and then finally, like this one, you notice we're looking at the 108 Mount Vernon, the hinge is on the inside,
Yep,
right? So you don't see it.
that's right.
You're gonna do the same thing?
Same thing.
Great, okay.
And one more thing, I'm gonna look into having that white molding and the cowl removed, so it'll just sit on a flat white surface. Because I mean, that's part of the molding is missing.
Okay,
But I think the brass box will be better if it's just sitting on the white surface.
okay, as long as you can patch that and repaint it so that you
Oh,
don't
it'll be
see a
done
big scar there.
professionally.
Yeah,
It'll be done, will be done. They're not gonna stand for any
right.
second rate things.
Okay, and since this is kind of a close-up view, just for the benefit of the commissioners, the address is 97 Mount Vernon, but this entrance is on West Cedar Street, and this
It's on
is
West Cedar Street,
yeah, and this is in the recess of the entrance. So in other words, what we're looking at here
correct.
is 90 degrees to the street, right?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, that's kind of important in terms of our being okay
No,
with
I understand.
this
I
particular
understand
treatment.
perfectly.
Okay, commissioners, any other questions about what is proposed here? Okay, we will then take, yeah, Nick, go ahead.
Mark, sorry, just a comment from me. So I'm just looking at the entrance on Google Street View. We only have one very limited view, but for just a question for Stephen, is the white molding, is this kind of, is it the same on the other side? Because it looks like there are
No.
panels on the other side. So you
No,
said you're going to remove the molding, but there's,
with this molding, yeah, there's nothing on the other side as far as I know. It's all just a
right, let me
flat
just-
surface. We're actually
sorry.
having it painted next week.
So it looks like there is some molding here. And sorry, I don't have a better view. Everything's blurred out on Google Street View
Okay.
in this area, but it looks like there's molding on this side. So I'm assuming it's also on the other side, and we would want to
Okay,
retain that.
I can have that molding, have them keep that molding.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll leave it to the commission, but I just wanted to show the commission that there is decorative molding on the interior of this door, and we'll want to make sure that it's maintained because it looks like it's original.
Mhm.
Sorry, Mark, just wanted to make sure that we're aware.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's kind of where I was coming from. If it looks like that molding on that side, Nick, might be recessed though, rather than
Yeah,
the recessed panels. So I think what we want to do, and maybe we can even just delegate this to staff in terms of how you treat that that molding. Okay, let's come back to that. Nick, would you be comfortable just
yeah.
making
I'm
a
fine with
final
that.
call on that? Great. Okay. So commissioners, any other just clarifying questions before we take public comment on this? Okay, let's go ahead and take public comment. If you want to be heard on the record, please raise your hand in the Zoom using the button at the bottom of your Zoom panel. Nick will unmute you and call on you in turn.
Okay, first up we have, oops, sorry. First up we have is Rochelle. Rochelle, go ahead.
Beacon Hill Civic Association, we do not oppose enclosure of the intercom in the brass box as it satisfies guideline E7. We also included photos of either side of the doorway. End of comment.
Thank you, Rochelle. Mark, I'm not seeing any other public comments, so we can go back to you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, yes, I see it. Now, thank you, Rochelle. I'm looking at those right now. That is very helpful. It looks like there is recessed paneling on the opposite side and an applied molding on this side, but there's a bigger sort of rectangle of molding that you can't see in the zoomed in version that would be retained. So I don't know if we do need this smaller square in which the panel is now sitting, but again, we'll leave that to Nick to finalize. I'm happy to do that. You can see the applied molding on the right there, yeah. Okay, no other public comment? Okay, we'll close public comment. Okay, so let me actually quickly, Nick has a very nice summary in the staff comments on this. So this is for everyone, for the public's benefit, you know, an issue that's come up many times now of late, the installation of these digital intercom panel systems with cameras and so forth. And this is a treatment that we have approved in certain circumstances, not in every circumstance, but to enclose the panel in a box in certain circumstances. And I believe it's fair to say, I'm just finding Nick's very helpful notes on this, that this particular circumstance does meet the de facto standard or criteria that we've established for in adjudicating this, which is the following. It is on a facade not facing the street. We've already established that. There's no major interior renovations occurring. No architectural features will be obstructed or obscured, and there are more than one unit in the building. In other words, it kind of requires, the nature of the building requires an intercom panel that can access a large number of units, and so forth. So I think this does, you know, obviously in the first instance, we would prefer that these things, of course, not be installed in the first place, but we can't unring the bell here. What we can try to do is correct this in an analogous and consistent fashion with how we've done it in other examples, one of which is just literally across the street at 108 Mount Vernon. And so since I think this does meet the criteria and is an appropriate solution to this, I'm fine with it. Commissioners, any other thoughts to the contrary?
No.
Okay, hearing none, I will approve I will move to approve the application as submitted with the following proviso, that the intercom system is centered on the panel, and that the unit and proposed brass box are not obstructing any architectural detail, and the final resolution as to what, if anything, to do with the existing applied molding around the intercom panel be delegated to staff. Do I hear a second?
Second it.
Okay, we will vote Commissioner, and the friendly amendment to the motion to dismiss the violation contingent on the approval with provisos.
I
Can I
second
just,
that.
thank you. We will vote Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Feingold,
Aye.
Commissioner Kiefer votes aye, Commissioner Steele.
I don't know
Great.
what happened. It's been since last week.
Sandy, was that a yes?
So I'm hoping that it would be.
One more time, Commissioner Steele?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, there's a little crosstalk there. Sorry. Thank you very much, Stephen, for coming in. You'll get a letter from Nick with the details. Please follow him directly with any questions, and we appreciate your attention to this matter.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks very
Thanks a lot.
much.
Have a good night.
You too.
Let's see. Next, I believe is 51 Charles. Appreciate your patience. Is there a representative from 51 Charles? Who is anyone from 51 Charles?
I think it's Gary. Is it Gary?
Must be on the same.
Let's see.
Same
Yeah,
size as.
Gary, are you here? Someone from Persona or 51 Charles? Just raise your hand in the Zoom if you're here.
Yeah, I'm not seeing him.
All right,
love-
let's see.
Hmm.
All right. So it looks like they're not here. Maybe we'll check back after the next one and come back to that if they show up. But
Okay.
I guess we need to move on.
Yep.
So design review, the first item under design review is going to be 106, 206 Cambridge?
106.
Is it 106 or 206 next? It looks like
106.
106 on the agenda.
106. Sorry, that was my mistake. Yep.
Okay, 106, someone
Yep.
here from,
Yep. There she is right there. I see her.
Oh, it's New Place.
All right.
and that is, forgive me, that is Ricky. Is that Ricky?
My name is Fong. I'm the site designer from the new CC sign.
Oh, yes. Hi, welcome. Thank you for coming in. So do you, by the way, I just want to say at the outset, thank you very much for working with Nick to revise this design in time for this hearing. We appreciate that. Can you give us just a quick summary of what you are proposing?
I think that's the side for the channel letter side, right?
Yeah, sorry, I just realized that. Let me just pull up your updated application. You did send us over an updated one, so let me get that for you. My apologies.
So this is on Cambridge Street, just to orient everyone, near the intersection with Bowden Street, just 2 businesses down from the corner. Now recently added to the historic district. So this is rightly in our jurisdiction.
Got it right here. All right. And thank you very much to Fong for her quick responsiveness on this alteration here. So here we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for the basic is just the existing awning. We change the fiber only. So we don't touch the frame. We just change the fiber, and then is a black color fiber, and then with the golden yellow color for the letter.
Okay, very good. And this will constitute the only sign on the building. Is that correct?
They have I think they have a 3-store different the business in this building. One is the Dunkin' Donut on the right hand side, and
For this business, yes, just for this business, I mean, sorry.
for this business, yes.
Right, so it'll be the only sign for this business on the building.
Yes.
Great, okay. So basically, just to orient anyone, if there was any confusion, if someone may have looked on the portal or the agenda earlier this month, you are, instead of putting a sign on the building, you're gonna put the branding for the business on the awning, and that's going to be the sign.
Yeah.
Right, great. Okay. Very good. And this is a fixed awning, is that correct?
Yes,
Not a retractable one, right? And there's one there now or no?
just one, just one.
But I'm sorry, is there an awning there now?
Yes, that's
There
the,
is.
the existing awning, yes.
Yes, okay, and it's a black one, and you're just gonna replace the awning so you can put your logo on it, right?
Yeah.
Right, okay, very good. So we're just basically changing the awning to change the branding on the business because it's a new business. Very good. Commissioners, any other questions about what's proposed here?
No.
Okay, we'll take public comment. If you want to be heard on the record, raise your hand in the Zoom. Nick will call on you.
Okay, first up we have is Rochelle. Rochelle, go ahead.
Beacon Hill Civic Association, we do not oppose the awning with the provisos that the logo graphic be reduced materially in size and relocated to the bottom strip to satisfy guidelines I-6 and I-7. End of comment.
Thank you, Rochelle. And not seeing any other public comment, Mark.
Okay, thank you. We'll close public comment. So let's see. So forgive me, I was multitasking here, but to the question of the size, I think, I mean, this is the only sign on the business. So I think, and they've put the logo only on the top of the awning and not on this panel in the front, which is a treatment that we do see sometimes. There are extant examples of signs functioning awnings functioning as signs in the district on Charles Street, where there is lettering on both the top and the panel, the valance, or whatever you want to call it, in the front. So I think under the circumstances, I'm less concerned about the size of the lettering. But commissioners, does anyone feel differently about that? Should we make it a little smaller? Again, understanding, I mean, I think it would be consistent, I think, and Nick, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it would be consistent approximately of lettering of a scale that we would allow if this were a belt sign and not an awning.
Yes.
And I say that, I think it's relevant because again, this is the only signage on the building.
Yeah, there's no other signage, including the windows. So I would say that this is a fair dimension for this particular sign. And we just appreciate the applicant working with us to come up with that.
Right.
I mean, I move to accept it well, actually, did anybody else have any questions? Or do any other commissioners have any?
I am fine with it myself. Anyone else?
I'm fine with it.
I'll just note for the record, the scale of the logo at least is, it's consistent with DeLuca's, for example, has an awning that has a big logo on it and then lettering on the valance below. Savinore's, before it closed, had both large logo that top to bottom took up most of the area of the awning. So I don't think it's out of proportion with those. And those buildings, in both cases, also had projecting signs. And so I think under the circumstances, it's certainly, in my view, acceptable. But I'm sorry, Commissioner Allen, you made a motion to accept as submitted?
Yes, correct.
Does anyone want to second that?
Second.
Okay, we will vote then. Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Feingold,
Aye.
Commissioner Kiefer votes aye, Commissioner Steele.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much for coming in. Again, appreciate very much your efforts to make something that was appropriate for the historic district and acceptable to the commission, and appreciate you getting the materials on time in on a timely basis. You'll get a letter from Nick confirming our determination. If you have any questions, please follow up with him directly. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
You too,
too.
thanks.
See you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Tom.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, moving along, 27 Hancock, I believe, is next. And just a heads up, I think the last two items on the agenda are 27 and 29. Hancock, sorry about the noise. And those are the same applicants, so we need to adjudicate them individually, but they are related. And so just a heads up, we're gonna have the same applicant for both, and that is Tim. Is Tim Jones here?
Yes, I am. Hi.
Hi,
good evening.
Tim. Welcome. Thanks for coming in. Let's start with 27. You want to just give us a quick summary of what you are proposing?
Absolutely. So as you've indicated, 27 and 29 Hancock, they're neighboring buildings, separate application. 27 Hancock, where it's rehabilitation and renovation of this building to allow for the creation of 5 for sale dwelling units. The rehabilitation includes facade restoration on Hancock Street. That restoration includes patching and repairing of the existing cast stone, lintels and sills. We're going to repaint the lintels and sills with the HC 69, which is presented in this presentation. There we go. So one of the things with 27 Hancock, it's a mirror image of 25, which is just to the right side of it. So what we're proposing to do here is they were built at the same time to paint, use the same colors that are the coating that's on 25 for 27. As part of the restoration of the facade, we're replacing the existing windows. All windows with the exception of the window on the first floor. I want to clarify there. The first floor window, we're going to scrape clean and repair that existing window trim. And the intent is to keep that window. The remaining windows on Hancock Street will be replaced with the JB Sash, JB Proper Bostonian wood windows. We're scraping, cleaning the existing fireplace, the fire balconies. If you go to the next sheet, there we go. A little more detail in terms of what we're planning to do at the entry. And again, I think I sent some photos, and I have some other photos of this. The entry door comparing, this is 27 here, but 25, which is right next to this, the wood entry is a unfinished, the surround is unfinished wood. We're proposing to do the same thing here to scrape this existing, the white paint off of this entrance, off the surround, and refinish it similar to 25. We're proposing to install the buzzer that's shown here, the exterior pendant. And these are the colors that the HC 69, which we're proposing to use on all the patching and repairing of the lintels, the cast stone, and the sills. And the HC 190 is the color that we're proposing to use at the cornice, as well as on these the fire escapes.
Okay, very good. And just quick question, Tim, on the entry. I mean, we'll come back to this, but just to clarify the refinishing of the surround, are you going to do the door similarly?
Yes, the door is to remain. We're going to clean this, scrape and clean the door.
Is it stained or painted right now?
Currently, I believe it appears to be stained.
Okay, I just couldn't tell from the photo. Thanks.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
And Mark, during our review, I think we had the two doors mixed up. So I think we were
Yeah.
looking at the other property. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going from white paint to stain, not the
Yeah.
other way around. Yeah, got it. Which I think we will find more acceptable, actually, not to preview too much, but okay. And then there's light fixture above, intercom panel, hardware, all shown very nicely there. Okay, very good. Can we go back to the wide shot of the entrance? Because I know we've got cornices on both buildings, and I just want to make sure I'm not similarly confusing those. The cornice is black now, is that right, Tim?
Correct.
Okay, you're just kind of
Yes,
effectively
yes.
repainting that in kind.
Yeah,
Got
the
it.
cornice is black now and continues across 25 into 27.
Yeah, got it. Okay. And then finally, the repainting, understanding that 25, not your building, but the twin next door is entirely painted. Your building, is it just the lintels you're painting, or are you painting out that, what looks like first floor,
We're
masonry?
we're recoding the entire facade in that HC 69.
Okay, so, but it's not painted right now above the first
There
floor?
is yes, there is a coating on the upper floors.
Oh, okay, I
Yes.
can't tell from the photo if that's natural stone or not. It is painted, or it's
Yes,
coated, whatever we want to call it?
it's coated. Yes.
Okay, so then, just to clarify further, can we go back to the paint chip for a second? Are we replicating 25? Is that what's proposed?
That's exactly what we're doing there. Yes,
Matching 25?
correct.
Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't understand that either. Thank you. Okay. And then, at least for the moment, okay, the proposal for the fenestration is what you've shown here, these sort of elongated 6/6 windows on the second and third floor. What are the windows on the, oh yeah, I see right there. They're 2/2 right now on the top floor. Right, okay. Okay, so again, just for clarifying questions at the moment, commissioners, anything else, we need to better understand what's proposed here?
No,
Okay, why don't we, and Tim, I didn't mean to cut you off. Is there anything else in the proposal that we haven't
No.
touched on? Great, okay, let's take public comment. If you want to be heard on the record, raise your hand in the Zoom.
Okay, let me just see. The first up we have is Maureen. Maureen, go ahead.
Yes, hi, my name is Maureen Collins. I actually live at 25 Hancock Street, apartment 1. I'm the only owner occupant in the building, so really glad to be invited to join. And I was just wondering, in terms of having the same paint colors and mimicking 25 Hancock, I was wondering, do you plan on hiring the same masonry company to be able to do the same mirroring and replication? And, is there anything that I can do as a neighbor to help facilitate that?
In terms of matching, so we know that, not certain about hiring the same mason, the same company that did the work for 25. I'm not certain who that person is, but we'd likely bid this out. What we did is match the colors. We had the paint chips and we went out, and you may have seen this out. Trying not to be on your stoop, but we did match the color, the white all brown, to your building, which is great that these were the way that they were. 25 was restored, so we thought it, and the fact that they're mirror images of each other. So it's quite easy to use 25 as an example of what we want to achieve at 29 in terms of the aesthetic and finish.
Great. Yeah, and I just wanted to, to lend a neighborly hand if there's anything that we can do in terms of, sharing contact information for vendors, just to make sure that, everything at 27 looks similarly to 25. Happy to help you out.
I appreciate that. We're adding a handrail on 27, and we love the way that yours, like the intent is to match the handrail at 25. If we have any trouble tracking that down, maybe we can reach out to you. But it's the fact that you're right there, and it's a beautiful looking project. And the idea is to mimic what was done there.
Great, terrific. And Sunith and I have been emailed a couple months ago because 27 and 25 Hancock share a common easement, and it's actually my unit's only emergency egress. So, when it gets time to, work on the back patio and how, logistics on that, please feel free to reach out to me.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for being so accommodating. I'm sorry, I apologize. I jumped right in. I should mention that Sunith and Edward are the owners and our clients with Fenway CDC are also on the call.
Hello, welcome.
Thanks
for joining. And thank you, Maureen. So Jim, on that last point, just a clarifying question, and we'll get to other public comment in a second, but since we're on the subject of matching, there is that wonderful kind of rope detail in this sort of column-like feature between the windows on the first floor. Actually, on the window to the left. Yeah, that exactly, Nick. Thank you. It appears to be darker on 25. See, that's sort of the same color right now as the surrounding window trim. But the one on 25 appears, at least looking at it on the Google Maps, appears to be darker.
No,
Yeah,
it's a
Nick, there you
darker.
go.
Yeah.
On the right. What's the plan there in terms of the actual window sash and that that column detail?
We'll want to match that. The plan will be
Okay.
to match the color
Okay,
there.
very good.
20, yeah, at
Thank you.
25. Good eye. We didn't catch the fact that there was identified that on the plan.
Right.
On the
Great, thank
proposal.
you. So sorry, we're still in public comment. Again,
We are.
if you, Nick will acknowledge you.
Yep. So next up we have is Christina. Christina, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Christina Madick, and I am here representing Homes on Hancock. And I just want to voice our support for this proposal. And that's it.
Thank you, Christina. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. And last but certainly not least, we have Rochelle. Rochelle, go ahead.
Beacon Hill Civic Association, we do not oppose the door hardware as it meets guideline E5 for appropriate design. We do not oppose the light fixture as it meets guideline E6 for traditional location and appropriate size and style. While guidelines G2 and G4 do not allow lintels to be painted and prefer the existing paint on masonry surface to weather, it appears that the lintels as well as the entire brownstone body of the facade was painted the same as its sister building, 25 Hancock. So we do not oppose repainting these fully weathered off surfaces to match 25 Hancock, which itself was recently repainted under approval in a color that replicates that of brownstone. Assuming the windows are documented as non-historic or beyond repair, we do not oppose replacing the windows with the JB Sash Proper Bostonian product, known to meet guideline D6 for insulated glass. However, the fourth floor windows retain the current 2/2 configuration, since the proposed 6/6 configuration does not match 25 Hancock's 4/4 configuration. Historically, dormer windows do not have to match the windows of the main facade. Since 25 Hancock and 27 Hancock are sister buildings, we do not oppose changing the painted front entry door and surround condition to match 25 Hancock, as a very Victorian stained wood finish meets guideline G1 for historically appropriate paint color. And
No, I don't hate it, so if I want to just.
Thank you very much, Rochelle. Mark, there are no other public comments, so we can turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Rochelle. And let's see, so public comment is closed. Let's see, so just to recap, we're going to repaint the facade. We're going to refinish the entry in both cases to match the twin building at 25 next door. We're going to install light fixture, door hardware, intercom panel, and new windows. Nick, you are satisfied that these windows are not historic, is that right?
Yeah, I looked at them up close. They're definitely not historic.
Okay.
The pattern is unusual. So I think we'll need to discuss the lights, but they're definitely not historic.
Yeah, right, let's take that first, because I think that's the one thing that stands out as I think requiring some more attention here. I think, again, the windows are not particularly old or historic, and I think our objective here is always to, when we think about what's appropriate for, and our guidelines certainly articulate and describe, while they don't define historical and architectural appropriateness, there's certainly a theme of being consistent with appropriate for the original style of the building or the style as it's been modified. And of course, windows are the most common modification that we see. It was not uncommon for buildings to have windows replaced to an updated style. It's probably the most common feature that we see. This building is otherwise a pretty remarkable specimen in terms of its originality, kind of one of several buildings of this distinct style on Hancock Street, and it's survived, notwithstanding the challenges to the condition of its facade, pretty much intact. So I think just in terms of what would have been on this building originally, I think given its vintage, we can be pretty confident they would have been 2/2 and not 6/6. Personally, I appreciate the impulse, the notion, the desire to mirror what is clearly a twin building built at the same time, and what would have been, I think we can be very confident, originally identical. But it's not uncommon. In fact, we need only look literally across the street to find an example of a pair of twin buildings, one of which has had its windows Victorianized with 2/2, and the other retaining its original 6/6. This is a pair of much older, or well, considerably older federal period buildings from the very early 19th century, 20 and 22 Hancock Street, respectively, 20 being the Charles Sumner House, of obviously tremendous historical significance. And so I don't personally feel that, notwithstanding the building's otherwise matching features and the intention to match it further still, that would require us to match what is otherwise, frankly, a bit of a historical anachronism on the neighboring building. I think in general, that's kind of what we most want to avoid, is something that was never on the building to begin with. If we had evidence that there was a 6/6 pattern on this building at one point for some significant period of its life, and certainly if that had been the case originally, that would be another matter. I think we can be confident, given what we know about the architectural history, that it would not have been 6/6 originally, and I think we can be pretty confident that it would have been 2/2. And so I'm quite sympathetic to Rochelle and the Civic Association's comment in that regard. Anyone else? Okay, let's see. Does anyone dissent from that particular notion? Okay, and let's see. In terms of the other added features, the intercom panel is one that is very much a design that has been approved in the past. It's on the sort of approved list, right, Nick?
It's actually our preferred
Yeah.
Intercom system. Yeah.
Right, and it's got the brass plate. One question, Tim, abstracted for a moment from the light pattern on the windows, are you proposing insulated glass?
Low E glass, not insulated, no low E coating.
Insulated, yes. Low E, no.
No.
Okay, right. So, okay, so, and do we have? Well, okay, yeah. Okay, so let's see. Light fixture, I'm okay with that. Any other views on that? Door hardware looks good. Numbers look good.
Excellent.
The paint colors, I think, are fine. Okay.
All right, so quick question. Nick,
Yes, Commissioner Allen.
how is staff feeling about this?
Staff feels exactly as the commission feels about everything on this particular project. So I think I'm okay with everything thus far. I think the windows, in terms of the design of the grid pattern, they could be 2/2, but they could also probably be 1/1. So I'm fine with 2/2. So yeah.
Okay. Does anybody have an opinion about this? Okay,
Anyone else?
I motion to approve as submitted.
Well, hold on. We're proposing to that the windows would need to be 2/2 rather than what's proposed.
We're fine with 2/2, to be honest. The idea of we went 6/6 because we're matching what was at 25 as we discussed, and obviously I think 25, the windows there do not appear to be original either. So if there's some justification, we'll go on with 2/2, which you've indicated. That's fine with us.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Commissioner Allen, would you accept a friendly amendment to add a proviso that windows be in a 2/2 configuration.
Yes, with the
with-
proviso of windows be able to.
Okay, and since they're insulated glass, dark spacer bar, no low E glass.
Yes. Oh, he already said that. He already said
He
that.
said that, but I just want to make sure it's in the motion. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, do I hear a second to the amended motion?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Are we clear what we're voting on? Okay, we'll vote. Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Feingold,
Aye.
Commissioner Jackson. Sorry, Commissioner Kiefer votes aye, Commissioner Steele.
Aye.
Okay, the revised application is approved. Thank you very much, Tim, for your for coming in. You'll get a letter from Nick with determination, and we're going to need to see a cut sheet for the revised windows, just FYI.
Okay.
We didn't include that in the motion, but we'll just want to get a final design so we've got it in the file. Okay, moving on to 29. So this is the building, just to orient us, just immediately to the left to the one we've just
Correct.
discussed, right?
That exactly correct. Yeah, neighboring 27. Again, 29 Hancock. We're doing rehabilitation and renovation in this building to create 10 for sale dwelling units. And the rehabilitation, you want to, sorry, I'll jump to the next slide. You can see the context for this one. 29 in the center there, 27 on the right, which we just discussed, and 33, which is on the left side of 29 Hancock Street there. And then our next slide is our existing elevations. This returns masonry facade with a return there. Our next slide is the proposed work. So the rehabilitation includes the facade restoration again here, which is patching and repairing these existing cast stone lintels, repointing the entire facade, and that return there, the masonry facade and the return. We're replacing existing windows again on Hancock Street on all floors with the JB Proper Bostonian wood windows. We go to the next slide. It goes in a little more detail at the entrances. 29 Hancock. We have two entrances to the building here. This is we consider our primary entrance, which is the closest to 27, which is just to the right of this entrance here. We're proposing that they're patching and repairing the existing stone, patching and repairing the trim around the entry door, replacing the exterior surface mounted light, adding a buzzer, replacing the deadbolt and signage, the house numbers, and what we're listing is the painting for the coating here was the Whitehall HC69, which is going to be at the entrance. The black HC190, we're scraping and repainting all of the escapes. And then if you go to our next slide is our second entrance into 29, which is just to the left of the primary entrance. The first floor of this unit, the first floor units here, we have 2 units on this floor. We're trying to making them accessible, handicap accessible. So we're creating an accessible entrance threshold for this entrance. And that's going to require us to drop this granite stoop down about 6 inches. The original intent was to replace this door, and we're now deciding to go, instead of replacing the door, to keep the door, drop the door down, and add trim to the top of the door to pick up that 6-inch differential, which based on our dropping of this sill. Same door hardware that's going on this secondary door, all unlacquered brass. And I think we have one more slide, which is our windows, the window replacements. Again, all the windows all the windows on Hancock Street will be replaced with the JB sash. JB Bostonian.
And just for clarity here, since, tell us the light pattern that you're proposing.
This was, so if you go back to the elevation, a couple,
I think I saw a few different.
yes.
Yeah.
Uh,
And is that,
this,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
sorry. So
Go
this
ahead.
was sorry, 2/1.
Okay.
Sorry, 2/2, 2/2 here.
And the third floor and fourth floor, is that just an artifact of the rendering? Because it looks like it does look like 2/1 on.
Yeah, there's a line. Yeah, I'm sorry. There's a line that's, I think we should have lightened this up. There should be 2/2
Okay, throughout, yeah,
throughout.
okay. And then there is the cornice, you're gonna scrape and paint, and you're proposing to paint that black, is that right?
That's what we originally proposed. I think we're now considering going with the HC 69 with that cornice, but we're open to another color if there was one that's.
Okay, yeah, I think that's an interesting and important feature that we're gonna wanna talk about a little more. But for the moment, what if anything happens to the fire balconies, you're not removing them, you're just,
Scraping and repainted those with the HD, the black.
Right.
HC
Okay.
190.
Okay. You're not able to get rid of those?
The balconies?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Let's see, anything else? Okay, is that pretty much it?
Yes.
Great, okay, thank you. Clarifying questions from the commission before we take public comment? Okay, hearing none. Let's go ahead and take public comment. If you want to be heard on the record, please raise your hand in the Zoom using the button at the bottom, and Nick will unmute you.
Okay. Mark, just before I do, just make a note when you discuss the masonry to talk about the differences in the masonry on the front facade because of the alteration of the building in the early 20th century.
Yes.
So just make a note of that just to discuss. Okay. First up we have we'll go to Christina. Christina, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Christina Madek and I represent Homes on Hancock, and I just want to voice our support for this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. All right. And then next up we have is Rochelle. Rochelle, go ahead.
Beacon Hill Civic Association. While guideline A7 prohibits changes to existing door openings, we do not oppose lowering and resetting the threshold to meet ADA compliance, as the historic fabric is not being destroyed and can later be returned to its historic appearance, and the door itself is not historic. Assuming the windows are documented as non-historic or beyond repair, we do not oppose replacing the windows with the JB Sash proper Bostonian product, known to meet guideline D6 for insulated glass, and agree 2/2 is a more appropriate configuration, unlike the existing 1/1. We oppose painting the cornice black as it does not satisfy guideline G1 for historically appropriate paint color, and the same or similar brown color as masonry would be historically appropriate, as these tenement building cornices were meant to appear as sculpted wood or stone while actually being made of stamped metal. End of comment.
Thank you, Rochelle. Mark, not seeing any other public comments, we can send it back to you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll close public comment. Yeah, this is a very, very interesting building. Maybe more so than it might look like at first blush. But if you look closely, you see this is a very early building, a federal period building. It's coarse brick and Flemish bond that evidently was altered dramatically, probably around the turn of the 20th century, to re-envision it as a tenement apartment building, when we can probably imagine that an additional story at least was added, and this rather elaborate, interesting cornice. It also has and the analogy here would be something like 2 Chestnut or 57 Mount Vernon, roughly 8 or 10 foot section that was probably added to the left. So you can sort of see that original 3-bay house peeking out from under this much larger facade. You can see the difference in the color there, the darker brick to the left, which is in common bond rather than Flemish bond. Yeah, there's a nice outline. There's your original building below and to the right of where Nick is indicating there. And then everything above and to the left of that is likely the later early 20th century addition, probably to close the gap between what was a later building added. This is exactly what happened at 2 Chestnut and 57 Mount Vernon, to close the gap with that building that had since been built next door. So I think that's important to how we think about both the cornice and the windows, because clearly the expression of this building, while its early federal period DNA is observable if you look closely, it clearly reads as, again, consistent with our guidelines, this later renovation, the style of its later renovation, which is this turn of the 20th century tenement apartment building and so forth. So I think 2/2 windows are appropriate for that period. And since the building really does emphatically reflect that style rather than the original, that's 2/2 be most appropriate. And then with respect to the cornice, I think I'm likewise sympathetic, I think, to the comment, Rochelle's comment from the Civic Association, that notwithstanding the fact that you have black cornices in the 2 neighboring buildings, and certainly appreciate, wanting to, have a nod of consistency there, I think we need a color that would be historically and architecturally appropriate for that later addition. And it's been suggested something that matches the masonry, or perhaps if it was white originally. Tim, do you have any sense? I don't know if you've been able to get all the way up there, but of what's on there now color wise, or what was on there and may have flaked off?
Yeah, it's hard to. We've been on the roof of both of these buildings, but it's hard to see what to get clear view, and even on the 5th floor, even looking up from these of 29, it's hard to identify what the original color was. It does have a masonry sort of reddish brown tint to them. It's spotty, but it is clear that it was some sort of reddish brown color that was there originally.
Yeah, there's a really nice run of these buildings at the far end of Phillips Street where it intersects West Cedar on both sides, West Cedar and Phillips, many of which still have that similar kind of cornice. And there's not an obvious, unitary choice in terms of the colors, because of course I'm sure they've been modified over time. But particularly if we think there's evidence that at some point it had something more like a masonry color, that would be, I think, a good place to start, and as firm a conjecture as we can make as any, failing any direct evidence from paint analysis and so forth. Let's see, Nick, what else did we want to talk about with respect to the masonry, just to remind me again?
The other thing we just want to talk about is the lowering of the the lowering of the threshold for the door on the left side, right?
Oh, okay, right. So yeah, I appreciate Rochelle's comments from the Civic Association. This is we do have a guideline about masonry openings. I'm not sure it doesn't define exactly the full range of contexts in which it's meant to be applied, but it's worth noting here. This is a marginal enlargement, but I think if nothing else, this is quite modest, and is, as Rochelle pointed out, completely reversible, doesn't destroy any historic fabric, the door's not original, and so forth. And you're going to keep the actual, you're just going to literally lower it?
Right.
Yeah, so you're not even removing that stoop or whatever you want to call it.
We have to add a trum in order, we're lowering it, and then we'll add some sort of trim to mask, to cover up that 6-inch, the difference.
Okay. And what will that be made out of?
It will be a wood trim, similar to what's there now.
Okay. And let's see, what else? So you're not affecting the sidewalk at all? You're just literally doing this all within the envelope of that entry? Yeah.
Correct. Just at the existing granite stoop there.
Okay. I think I'm fine with that for all the reasons that Rochelle nicely articulated. Anyone else have a view about that, or a more specific view about the paint color for the cornice? Okay, let me ask it in the affirmative. If I think I would I think I'm going to suggest that we ask that the cornice be repainted in a similar color to match or reflect the masonry, with the final color to be the decision on the final color and a sample with staff. Is everyone okay with that?
That makes perfect sense.
Because we haven't asked them to do this yet, we don't have an actual color to use. So I think we know what we want, I think. And obviously Nick can just work with them to find a suitable color.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Anything
Sorry,
else?
Mark, you wanted it to be like in a, what was the rough idea of the shade, or are we just giving all of the decision making to me?
I think, yeah, sorry, the guidance would be,
Yeah.
as Rochelle, I think, nicely articulated, that it would be taking as cues what's there now, and that the objective would be to match or be harmonious with the similar in tone to the masonry. So a like a brick-like color or something to that effect. Okay, anything else? Any concerns, questions about any of the other details? Again, the windows will be 2/2, just to clarify.
Yes.
There was a little issue with the drawing, but that was intended to reflect 2/2. Okay, I think with that, I will move as follows, that the application be approved with the following proviso: that the color of the repainting of the cornice be revised to reflect a color consistent with the existing color, and specifically reflective of, to match or at least harmonize with, be consistent with the masonry, with the final color, and a sample approved in advance, or a chip approved in advance, delegated to staff.
Agreed.
Okay, is that a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, have I missed anything, Nick? Anything else? I'll just add, go ahead, Nick, sorry.
Sorry, just revised drawings for the left side door, because they said they were going to add a piece of trim to the top, so we would just like some revised drawings there.
Oh, right, and with the final design, revised drawings for the final design of the left side door submitted to staff in advance of construction. Can I just get a
second
nod to
that.
thank you very much, Commissioner Allen. Okay, with that revised motion, we will vote. Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Feingold,
Aye.
Commissioner Kiefer votes aye, Commissioner Steele.
Aye.
Great, thank you very much, Tim. Appreciate all your work on this. I know this has been a long time coming. I will just say, for the record, as I understand it, this is the now final resolution of the affordable housing component of the large development of the Archer and Donahue buildings that were sold from Suffolk University now several years ago and redeveloped. And it sounds like, and we heard some testimony from the neighbors, that this has been a long time coming, a lot of effort, a lot of input from the community. And I think it looks like quite a successful resolution of this important issue to bring more affordable housing to Beacon Hill. So thank you for your work on this and your sensitivity to the requirements of the historic district. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. You'll get a letter from Nick with the particulars. Any questions, follow with him. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thanks, Sunith. We appreciate your contacting us. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, administrative review. Any comments, questions, concerns, or recusals on any of the administrative items?
No.
Nope.
No.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve them?
You got to go to the public.
Oh, I think I've made it 1 month, literally once. I have not forgotten. Thank you, Commissioner Allen, as always. What would we do without you? Does anyone have a public comment they want to make? If anyone's even left. Going once, public comment. Okay, hearing none, we'll close public comment. Does anyone now want to make a proper motion for approval?
I motion to approve.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll vote. Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Feingold,
Aye.
Commissioner Kiefer votes aye, Commissioner Steele.
Aye.
Great, administrative items are approved.
Great.
What is left?
Just staff updates. That's it.
Staff updates, please, Nick,
Yep.
go ahead.
Awesome. So just a friendly reminder to if you're going to be missing a hearing or you can't attend, to just let me know as soon as possible. Everyone's usually pretty great with it, but we're just tracking attendance. So if you have to call out, there's no problem there. Just let me know ahead of time. So just a reminder so that I can invite your alternate. And then the second thing is that I will be attending Hillfest. I think I saw, is Patricia still here? So I'll be tabling there. If any of the commissioners would like to table with me, just shoot me a note. Just going to have a couple items to kind of maybe some giveaways, some friendly maps to show people the new extension of the district, and of course the guidelines, and maybe some books about the history of Beacon Hill, just to talk to the community, get the community excited about what we do, and make us not so scary by showing up to these community events and saying that we're real people, and we're your neighbors, and we're here to help, not hinder. So that's it. Yeah, that's all I have for
You know, I've
staff
got to be
updates.
Glenn. How scary can we possibly be?
I don't know, by some of the phone calls.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
Mark-
Right.
So-
Well, yeah, no, it's a fun event. Encourage everyone to come out. I still don't know if I there's a chance I may be out of town. If I'm not out of town, I will certainly be there, and I will be, the tentative plan is to do, as I usually do, an abbreviated architectural walking tour, just FYI,
Oh, fun.
as part of Hillfest. And we'll make a lap around up Mount Vernon and back down Chestnut, but there's a lot to talk about just in that few blocks. So I hope to see you all there. But I don't know yet if I'm going to be here, but if I am, we'll do that. So something to look forward to.
Awesome. That's all I have.
Great. Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
Okay, do we hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Say
Aye.
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 Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Happy
Great.
rest of summer.
Happy
Thank you,
summer.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.